And we're back to the top 5 build series. Welcome back everyone, it's your casual gamer Meep here, and as you may have guessed by the video title, this video is going to be on the nurse. Sally Smithson, aka the nurse, is the strongest killer in Dead by Daylight, and because of her teleporting power, the perks and builds that you can use on her are almost endless. However, with that being said, she does require a lot of practice through trial and error, and as such, her power level and threat depends on the skill of the controlling player, similar to how I expressed my opinions on the Huntress whenever I did her top 5 build video. With these builds, I hope to do the nurse justice because of her unique versatility and strength, and yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video everyone. The first build I want to talk about has become one of my favorites to use on the nurse. It features the perk Lethal Pursuer, which reveals the aura of survivors at the start of the trial for up to 9 seconds. This is here to save time finding survivors at the beginning of the game, and the information that it gives you knowing where every survivor is simply invaluable. Typically I'll go for the closest survivor knowing that I can get to them more easily, but if they all start together then I can break them up and prevent them from starting on nearby generators. After eventually downing a survivor, this is when the second perk comes into play, and that is Agitation. This makes it more likely I'll get to a Scourge hook by increasing my movement speed while carrying a survivor. Which Scourge hook you may ask? Floods of Rage and Pain Resonance. If a generator explodes and someone screams because of Pain Resonance, I'll know which generator to prioritize since it has the most amount of progress on it. Typically I'll run at least one of the range and recharge add-ons to get to the generator within 2 blinks, so I'll be able to see their scratch marks of the survivor running away, and so I can chase them overall. Meanwhile, when the survivor on the Scourge hook is rescued, Floods of Rage reveals the aura of all other survivors for up to 7 seconds. This sporadic information is great on Nurse because of her ability to traverse the map more easily, and it allows her to capitalize on the information Floods of Rage can give her. It's also really effective when it activates during the middle of a chase because, essentially, if the survivor breaks line of sight on you, you get to know exactly where they are, so you can hopefully get a free hit on them with your next set of blinks. It wasn't too long ago that I discovered how good Floods of Rage is actually on the Nurse. I made a whole video dedicated to this build, which I will be including in the link in the top right if y'all want to check it out. It's really good. This next build also features the perk Lethal Pursuer for the same reason, which is basically just saving time finding survivors at the start of the trial. Once downing a survivor and hooking them, this is when the fun really begins as the build requires hooks to start gaining its power. Once the survivor is unhooked, 3 things can happen. If we're more than 32 meters away, Make Your Choice will activate, making the person who rescued them exposed for 60 seconds, meaning they're one-shot. And if we're more than 32 meters away when this happens, then Hex Devour Hope gains a token as well, because it also requires us to be more than 24 meters away from the hook whenever a survivor is rescued. And lastly, if we hook them on a Scourge hook, because of Floods of Rage, we'll be able to see the exposed survivor when Make Your Choice activates for up to 7 seconds whenever they rescue the survivor, so we can hopefully down them and repeat the process overall. The purpose of this build is to basically use the information from Floods of Rage combined with the lethality of Make Your Choice to build up the tokens of Devour Hope quickly so we can reach this 3 and 5 token threshold so we can start killing survivors. And all before they're able to find and break the totem altogether. This build is a very high risk, high reward one as Devour Hope can be broken at any point in the trial, and we can also get bad Scourge hook spawns altogether. Not to mention that at the start of the trial, Lethal Pursuer is gone, so we're essentially down 3 perks, and if Devour Hope breaks, we're down to 2 perks altogether. While it might not be the most consistent build, when it does work however, it can be one of the most satisfying ones to use on the Nurse. Meanwhile, for a more aggressive Nurse who likes a challenge, this build is designed to select every survivor. It features the perk Monitor and Abuse, which does 2 things. It decreases your tear radius by 8 meters outside of a chase while increasing your field of view, and it also increases your tear radius by 8 meters while you're chasing someone, which is the most important part for the build. The second effect is what really matters because the next perk is Infectious Fright. Infectious Fright causes all survivors to scream while inside your tear radius whenever a survivor is put into the dying state by any means. By having an increased tear radius, it increases the chances of detecting nearby survivors with Infectious Fright. So depending on if and how many survivors scream determines what you should really do next. If it's one survivor, I'll go to their location and try to down them. However, if it's more than one, I will instantly pick up the down survivor for Agitation to increase my tear radius even further. In a best case situation, which let's be honest, we don't really get that many, you'll start a chase while carrying the survivor for Monitor and Abuse to increase your tear radius even further than that. All of these are building up essentially to the last perk, which is Starstruck. This is when the gameplay gets really spicy because when carrying a survivor, all other survivors inside the tear radius become exposed, hence why having a larger tear radius is ideal. Until you stop carrying a survivor or the survivors leave your tear radius altogether, they'll be exposed for 30 more seconds. And because the build doesn't have any means of slowing down the survivors or tracking them altogether, it makes you have to go all in on trying to insta-down and slug everyone. This build, however, can be really effective on smaller maps, like I've demonstrated on Dead Dog Saloon with the footage that you see here. Now let me ask y'all a question. Have you ever wanted to walk around as the Nurse but with normal movement speed? Well, with a spasmodic breath, you can, because after hitting a survivor with a blink attack for the next 60 seconds, you lose your ability to teleport, but you have normal movement speed as the trade-off to it. For a more interesting game, you get to turn the nurse into a mostly M1 killer, which for some survivors might actually catch them off guard. As a mostly M1 killer with this build, the whole W meta, Dead Heart, and pallet greeting are what's working against you, at least for the majority of the trial that is, when these add-ons take effect. To help slow the game down, Corrupt Intervention is here to stop the survivors from instantly working on generators near them for the first 120 seconds of the game. Meanwhile, the wombo combo of Spirit Fury and Enduring is great for dealing with pallets as you lose your ability to teleport, and thus you need to play around pallets as you would a normal killer otherwise. Enduring is here for the reduced pallet stun durations, and Spirit Fury is to instantly break a pallet after you get stunned after breaking 2 pallets with it. And the last perk of the build is the almighty Save the Best for Last. It's basically here to reduce the cooldown animation of successful attacks each time we hit a survivor who's not the obsession. This is great for reducing the distance the survivor gains on you, as you're able to continue chasing faster after each attack, so long as you have stacks that is. Now, is this build the most effective one? Not really. It's more of a survivor watching one to see their reactions as the nurse comes barreling down at them like the Trapper or Nemesis would. If you also want to challenge yourself as the nurse, this build offers you the blend of being the most powerful killer and the least powerful one in the entire game, so yeah, have at it. And as always, the last build is the killer's lore-based one. Sally Smithson was a loving wife who dreamed of having her own family alongside her loving husband Andrew. This picturesque dream, however, came to an end, as Andrew as a lumberjack would not return one day from work. Fate had intervened, and Sally's life would never be the same again, as she would have to fend for herself, as she was now alone in the world. The first perk in the build is Corrupt Intervention. At the start of the trial, the 3 furthest generators from your starting location are blocked by the entity for up to 120 seconds. Sally, without an education, didn't have many choices for job prospects. She would take what she can get, and that was a job as an overnight nurse at the local Crotus Pren Asylum in town. For 20 long years, she would work her position as a nurse, caring for the insane and unwell people who resided within it. The second perk is a nurse's calling. Anytime a survivor is healing within 28 meters of your location, their aura is revealed to you. We later learn in Tome 6 Divergence how Sally's grip on reality slowly started to loosen with her patient interactions. With each patient, the staff had developed codes to refer to the patients as, 2 words basically describing who they are exactly. This is reflected in her add-ons The Catatonic Boy's Treasure, The Bad Man's Keepsake, and The Anxious Girl in the description of the Anxious Gasp add-on. One patient, however, the Broken Woman, is who caught Sally's listening ear. The Broken Woman was a former nurse fully wrapped in bandages and restrained to her bed. Sally would end up visiting the woman and listening to her as she explains to Sally that the patients of the asylum are filth to the world and need to be cleansed. She also tells Sally about a chemical solution she used to cleanse the world of her former patients when she was a nurse. There were times Sally would just sit at the foot of the woman's bed, just listening to her, as she talked about ridding the world of the filth through purification. The next perk in the build is Whispers. When you come within 32 meters of a survivor, Whispers activates. After more time went by, Sally's prospects on life and that of her patients became grim. She stopped caring about being nice to them and was starting to see them for the filth they were. One night, though, Sally prepared the chemical solution the Broken Woman had told her about. Little did the Broken Woman know, she would be the first to be purified with it as a result of it. She didn't stop with the chemical solution. In some cases, she ended up resorting to choking the patients to death. When morning came, over 50 patients and staff were dead. As Sally was put into the ambulance, presumably to be taken to a different asylum for having a breakdown, she would never be seen from again, as the ambulance had crashed along the way. The last perk of the build is Grim Embrace, as Sally had succumbed to the desire to purify the world around her and to free herself of the never-ending nightmare that was the asylum. Grim Embrace blocks all generators on the map for 40 seconds and reveals the aura of the obsession for 6 seconds after you hook all 4 survivors for their first time. The nurse has had a long and interesting journey, as she was part of the first DLC added to Dead by Daylight, which was The Last Breath. Surprisingly though, through nerfs and an entire rework, she still remains the strongest killer in Dead by Daylight. And all I have to say is, what do y'all think about the nurse in her current state? Were you one of the OG players who knew what it was like to play against the 7-blink nurse? Oh yeah, you heard me, that's right, 7 blinks. She used to have 3 by default and had 2 add-ons that could each add 2 more blinks. It's crazy to think about how much she's changed really over time. Be grateful nowadays that she only has 3 that she can have at max. Anyways, with that being said, we've come to the end of the video. If you enjoyed the video and want to support the channel, consider leaving a like as it helps promote the video through YouTube, and consider subscribing for more content. I'm me+3, and I will see you next time. Goodbye for now.